in order to simplify, since it's division, we're going to factor everything, but division means you have to flip the second fraction. So when we factor, we're also going to flip the second fraction. X minus 7 doesn't factor. 7x minus 21, you can pull out a 7. And we're flipping the second fraction, so the x minus 12 that doesn't factor goes on bottom. And then x squared minus 15x plus 36, that factors to, we could do 9 and 4, that doesn't have to be 15 though, 12 and 3. So x, both negative, 12 and negative 3. So you've got it all factored, you got it all written out. Anything that's on top cancels its match on the bottom. So the minus x minus 12, x minus 12, x minus 3, x minus 3. All we're left with is x minus 7 over 7. So B. When you're adding or subtracting fractions, you have to have the same denominator. These do, so that's good. So all you have to do is distribute your negative. So that turns to x plus 12 minus 2x. 2 negatives makes a positive 5. Combine like terms. X minus 2x is negative x. 12 plus 5 is 17. And you keep your denominator of 4x minus 16. So it's A. When you're solving an equation, you want to clear out the fractions. So we're going to multiply by whatever the common denominator is. Usually with this type, you can check to see if the two smaller denominators, the 2x plus 3 and the 3x minus 2, if they multiply to equal the bigger denominator, and they do. So you're going to take that common denominator, which is the two denominators multiplied together, and you multiply that to every term. So you multiply it to all three parts of the fraction. When you do that, you can cancel out whatever will cancel. So you multiply those together, that equals that denominator. So that's all gone. You just get x plus 4. When you cancel out here, the 2x plus 3 cancels. So we have x times 3x minus 2. And then the 3x minus 2 cancels here. So you have x times 2x plus 3. So we're going to distribute. We're going to combine like terms. Solve for x. So distribute. You get 3x squared minus 2x. And then distribute here. You get 2x squared plus 3x. Combine all your like terms and get everything on one side. So combine like terms on the left, we get 3x squared minus x plus 4. Combine like terms on the right, there aren't any. Now get everything on one side. I'm going to move everything to the left. So 3x squared minus 2x squared is just x squared. Negative x minus 3x, that's negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. And then plus 4. And we need to factor so that we can solve this out. So that's x minus 2 and x minus 2. So you solve that, you get two answers. X minus 2 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. You actually get the same answer twice. So x equals 2 is our answer. But with this type of problem, you have to go all the way back and you have to make sure that x equals 2 is not an excluded value, because you cannot have a 0 in the denominator. So the excluded values would be negative 3 over 2 and positive 2 over 3, so that's okay. So it's A, x equals 2. So when you go about solving this, first thing you want to do is get it into standard form. So put the x squared first, then the x, then the constant. Once you have that, you know what A, B, and C are. So just looking at the answers, we can tell this is not going to be factorable. You've got to do quadratic formula because those look like quadratic formula answers. So quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So plug in negative 3 for b, so that's negative 3 plus or minus negative 3 for b. 4 times a is 1, times c is 20, all over 2 times a is 1. So when you go and simplify this, do it inside the square root first. Negative 3 squared is 9. And then negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times 20 is negative 80. Negative, 2 negatives makes a positive 3. And that's all over 2. So 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 71 over 2. So we know it's not that. A negative inside a square root creates an I. This does not have an I. And also we have that it's a positive 3 here, so it's got to be C. So we need to factor this. When it's factored completely, which one is a factor? So there are 4 terms, which means we're looking for factoring by grouping. So you split it. And then from each piece, you're going to take out the GCF. So between 3 and 6, we can take out a 3 and an x squared. When you take out 3x squared from 3x cubed, you're left with an x plus 2. Do the same thing for the other part. Negative 5 and negative 10, you can take out a negative 5. And when you do, you're left with x plus 2. Factoring by grouping, these two parentheses are always need to be the same. And when they are, that's one of your factors. And then the front things that you factored out go into your other parentheses and you're all done. So 3x squared minus 5, that's a factor. X plus 2, that's a factor. It's not up there. So factor completely. Start by looking at a GCF. There's a 3 that you can factor out. 81 divided by 3 is 27. Now we've got perfect cubes. So we're going to use the difference of cubes formula, which starts with us taking the cube root. So the cube root of x cubed is x. The cube root of 27 is 3. And then you fill in your other parenthesis. You square the front. Then you multiply those two together. X times 3 is 3x. And then you square the back. 3 times 3 is 9. And then there's the same, opposite, always positive. So this sign was the same, this one's opposite, and this one's always positive. So C is the right answer. Oh, circled the wrong one. D is the right answer. So when you are doing difference of cubes, it always goes to AB, and then it's A squared, AB, B squared. It's kind of a formula to help you remember what you do with those terms. Here's another factoring. It's actually going to end up being cubes again. So start by taking out the 9. And when you do, you get x cubed plus 1. X cubed and 1 are both perfect cubes. We're going to do the same factoring pattern. You take the cube root of x cubed, you get x. The cube root of 1, you get 1. That's your a and b. And then you do a squared. So x squared. Then ab, 1 times x. And then b squared in the back, it's 1 squared. Fill in your signs using that SOAP. So it's started with a plus, so it's the same plus, opposites minus, and then always positive in the back. Don't lose your 9 out front. So D is right. When functions are even or odd, you just have to look at all the exponents. All the exponents on the variables. So constants are always even. 2, that's even because 2 is an even number. X to the 6, that's even because 6 is an even number. So f is an even function because it's even, even, even. Everything is even, so f is even. For G, we get a 9, which is odd. We have a 5, which is odd. And then the exponent here is a 1, which is odd. Odd, odd, odd. G is odd. And then looking at these exponents, we get a 5, which is odd. A 3, odd. X to the first, odd. A number, constant, that's always even. So that is not an odd or even function. G is the only one that's odd all the way through. When they're mixed, it's neither even or nor odd. Multiply the numbers. Multiply the complex numbers. All you gotta do is FOIL. 5 times 6. 5 times 9i. Negative 7 times 6. And then negative 7i times 9i. 7 times 9 is 63. I squared. So when you go to simplify these, we're going to combine like terms. But you got to get rid of I squared. I squared is always negative 1. So cross it out, change the sign. So we're combining our numbers. 30 and 63 is 93. It's not those. And then 45 minus 42, positive 3i. A. So looking at the answers to this, you can tell it's not going to be factorable. So if you can't tell this by looking at the numbers, look at the answers. So let's do quadratic formula. You could also do complete the square if you remember how to do that. So A, B, and C. Negative B plus or minus the square root. B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So it's negative 2 plus or minus the square root negative 2 squared minus 4 times a is 1 times c is 21 all over 2 times a, which is 1. Work out the inside of your square root. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times 1 times 21 is 84. So it's negative 2, which is 2, plus or minus the square root of negative 80 all over 2. So we know that negative 80 makes an imaginary number, so it can't be c. So when we go through and we simplify that, we can pull out the imaginary number, then we got square root of 80. When you do the square root of 80, you're looking for a perfect square inside of it. So the square root of 80 has got a perfect square in it. You can find square root of 16 in there. It's 16 times 5. 80 is 16 times 5. Square root of 16 is 4. So this is 2 plus or minus 4i square root of 5. And then you can divide everything by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. You never touch the number inside the square root. It's protected. It's got the little shield around it. So there's your answer. 1 plus or minus 2i square root of 5. So when you're solving this one out, since we've already got there's only one x in here. Even though it's in parentheses, there's only one x. So if we get that by itself, we can solve it. So we're going to try to get those parentheses by itself. So the first thing we can do is add the 32 to the other side. Trying to get those parentheses by itself, we're going to divide by 4. Now we've got the squared. So we're going to get rid of the square by doing the square root. So those cancel out. And then you got to do square root of 8. When you do the square root, you have to do plus or minus. So you get x minus 8 equals plus or minus square root of 8. We can simplify that because there's a 4 in there. Square root of 4 is 2. Leftover 2 goes back in. And then we got to get x by itself, so we're going to add the 8 over. So x is by itself. You've got an 8 and then plus or minus 2 square root 2, which is c. You could have also done this by taking the x minus 8. It's been a lot more work, though, because you would have to do quadratic formula. X minus 8 multiplied out twice. Get all your terms on one side, and then do quadratic formula. It could work out, though. You can do it. Another way that you can solve this out, your calculator can actually solve these. It just solves them in a weird way. So you can graph these. So if you type in that whole function, 4 x minus 8 squared minus 32 your calculator will graph it And you can get some answers by finding out where it crosses the x-axis, which if you push gsolve root, it gives you an answer of 5.171. The only problem with that, none of these look like 5.171. So you'd have to actually see what those are by typing those into the calculator also. So it's a lot of work, but you can check your work with a calculator this way. So when we look at what we got here, 8 plus or minus 2 square root of 2, if we type that into our calculator, 8 minus 2 square root of 2, minus 2 square root of 2, we're going to get that answer we were just looking at, that 5.171. Anytime you've got a fraction equals fraction, the easiest way to solve is just cross multiply. X times 3 is 3x. 5 times 4x plus 1 you have to distribute. Distribute. So 20x plus 5. Get your x's on one side. So negative 17x equals 5. And then divide by negative 17. You get x equals negative 5 over 17, which is both of those, because those were the same. So for these, similar to what we've done before, earlier in this review, you're going to find the common denominator and multiply everything by that common denominator. So x plus 4 times x minus 4 gets you x minus 16. So that's our common denominator, x plus 4 times x minus 4. Multiply it to every term. So cancel out whatever cancels. X plus 4 cancels. X minus 4 cancels. And then here they both cancel. So we've got 3 times x minus 4. You need to make sure you take this minus sign and change both signs that follow it. So we've got negative x plus 1 times the x plus 4 that did not cancel. And then the x plus 3. And there's nothing to multiply that to. So we need to simplify this and combine like terms and then put it over our LCD. All of our options have the same common denominator, so we just got to see what we get for the numerator. So 3x minus 12. Distribute this. Negative x squared minus 4x. And distribute the 1. Get plus x plus 4 plus x plus 3. Combine all your like terms. So we've got a negative x squared. Then combine all your x's. 3x, negative 4x, plus x, plus x. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. Plus 1 is 0. Plus 1 is 1x. And then your constants, negative 12, positive 4, that's negative 8. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. So we got the numerator that's there on A. So to get any relative mins or max, you just have to type it into your calculator. So we're going to go to the graph. We're going to type in this equation. So we're typing in 5x to the fifth plus 3x to the third. Plus 2x squared minus 2. When you go to solve it, you're just trying to find your max and min. So G solve, max will find your max. So our maximum is negative 0.3, negative 1.9. Maximum, negative 0.3, negative 1.9. Not that one. Not that one. We're down to either A or D. Then you do G solve min to get the minimum. And 0, negative 2 is your minimum. 0, negative 2, that one. Oh, wait, I crossed that one out already, though. D. So the remainder theorem to check to see if x minus 2 is a factor. Officially, all you have to do is you're going to do synthetic division by x minus 2, which means you do synthetic division with a positive 2 outside. But the way the question's worded, all it's asking is if you know what you're supposed to get at the end. That's almost all you got to check. So when you're doing synthetic division, you make sure that there's no powers missing. 3, 2, 1, we're good. You fill in your negative 7, your 10, your negative 5, and your negative 9. And we do the synthetic division, which is just addition and multiply. So you start by adding straight down. Negative 7 with nothing is negative 7. Then you multiply. 2 times negative 7, you get negative 14. Start over. Add and then multiply. Add those two, you get negative 4. Multiply, you get negative 8. Add those two, you get negative 13. Multiply, you get negative 26. Add those two, you get negative 35. That's our remainder. Remainder theorem says that if you get a remainder of 0, it's a factor. We did not get a remainder of 0. So it's not a factor. We did not get a remainder of negative 3 either. We did not get a remainder of 17. We got a remainder of negative 35. It was not a factor because we didn't get 0. We got negative 35 instead. So this is another division question. Since we're only dividing by x plus 1, we're going to do synthetic division. So when you do synthetic division, you got to change that sign. Change that to a negative 1. And make sure you're not missing any terms. So since we've got x squared missing, you got to remember to put a 0x squared. So we put a coefficient 1, 1, 0, 5, negative 1. Then we are adding and multiplying, just like on the other example when we did synthetic division. Add 1 times negative 1, you get negative 1. Add, you get 0. Multiply, you get 0. Add, still 0. Multiply, still 0. Add, you get 5. Multiply, you get negative 5. Add, you get negative 6. Negative 6 is your remainder, which means it's not C, because that's a positive 6 remainder. We have a constant term of 5. This would be 0x. This would be x squared. This would be x cubed. So we're looking for 1x cubed plus 5, and with a remainder of negative 6. 1x cubed plus 5. That's it. to solve, we're going to get everything on one side so we can hopefully factor. If you can't factor it or don't remember how to factor it, just do quadratic formula. So since there's a number in front, we're going to do bottoms up, multiply it to the back. You get negative 21. We have to find two numbers that multiply to be negative 21 and add to be 20. So two numbers that multiply to be negative 21 and add to be 20, that would be 21 minus 1. So when we go to try to factor this, we start with our x's. Our two numbers are 21 and negative 1. But the trick for bottoms up is you have to divide everything by whatever that front number was, 7. If it reduces, you reduce it. If it doesn't, bottoms up. 7 goes in front of the x. So when you solve these out, you get x equals negative 3. And 7x equals 1, so that means x equals 1 over 7. Which is A. Now, all of these equations, you can do them on your calculator. You just have to, once you get it like this, you can check your work. You can make sure you got it. Type in the equation, 7x squared plus 20x minus 3. These are your two answers. We've got two answers right here. It looks like it's crossing at 0 and negative 3, which that's pretty close to 0. That's why it looks like 0. Negative 3, that makes sense. If you want to know exactly what that was, all you got to do is g-solve, root. You get negative 3, like we said, and this is 0.143, which is 1 over 7. 1 over 7, negative 3. You can solve these with a calculator. Your calculator can get those same answers. It just looks different. What's the extraneous root? That means we go through all the steps, we get two answers. One of them doesn't work when we plug it back in. Square both sides, you get 3x minus 5. When you square x minus 5, you got to FOIL it out. So write it twice. X squared, you get a negative 5 and a negative 5. I'm going to combine those, and then plus 25. Everything on one side so you can solve it. Add the 5, you get 30, minus 3x, you get negative 13. Two numbers that multiply to be 30 and add to be 13. That's x minus 10, x minus 3. So set them both equal to 0 and solve it. You get x equals 10, x equals 3. One of those is going to be extraneous when you plug it back in. So you plug it into the very, very original equation. Plug in the 10, you get 30 minus 5, it's 25. 10 minus 5 is 5. That's true. Plug in the 3, you get 9 minus 5 is 4. Plug in the 3 here, you get 3 minus 5 is negative 2. That's not true. Square root of 4 is not negative 2. So this is our extraneous. X equals 3 is the extraneous root. Just like that last problem, though, if you did not know how to solve this by hand if you couldn't factor that for whatever reason. You graph it, G-solve root, it's going to tell you 3 and 10. You could get those by checking it on your calculator. If you graph that, you get 10 and 3. Or if you're really clever, you could actually type the original equation in, move everything to one side, graph it, and get the root. That will tell you the real answer, not the extraneous one.